It happened on the mysterious Isle of Seacliffe by Ian Gordon. 5. The Seven Sisters. December 27th, 2:30 p.m. Some moments ago, I was enjoying a cup of tea by the window, observing the occasional comings and goings of locals on the square below, when I heard a rustling by the door. Turning, I saw that a wrinkled brown envelope had been slipped under it. Collecting said item, I opened it, and discovered that it was an invitation. It reads as follows: Dear Mr. Howarth, welcome to the island. We would like to invite you to our humble sanctuary. A discussion is in order. From the Market Square, climb Wendell Passage in the direction of South Terrace, and look for us at Redditch Tower. It's the old church that overlooks the sea. Yours loyally, the Seven Sisters. The Seven Sisters, indeed. The pieces are falling into place. I'm eager to meet with them, and to listen to what they have to say, but it's fair to add that I'm a little nervous, too. Why on earth are they reaching out to me? Well, it looks like I've a little walk ahead of me. December 27th, 7:15 p.m. Where do I begin? After receiving the sisters' invitation, I finished my cup of tea and set out for Redditch Tower. The skies were still perfectly clear, resulting in a plunge in temperature. Fortunately, I was well prepared for the cold, having donned my wool scarf and gloves. I located Wendell Passage, a tight ginnel situated in the southeast corner of the square, and followed its narrow, meandering confines towards a steep stone staircase. I must have climbed some 200 steps or more before reaching South Terrace, an open thoroughfare overlooking the terracotta rooftops of the town below. The chill was biting up there, enhanced by a southerly gale. I was afforded a wonderful, clear view of Cap Mountain, towering above the heaths to the southwest. The barren plains between my vantage point and the mountain were breathtaking. That they could be traversed in an hour or a week was a dizzyingly disorientating notion as I gazed across its bleakness. I was taken aback by the scarcity of life. Few birds, few trees, with only the occasional impressions of cultivated land and wandering livestock. I followed the exposed thoroughfare a little further to the east in the direction of Redditch Tower. The structure was impossible to miss, though not as striking or imposing as the ever-looming headstocks of Morton Lead Mine to the west. The old church made quite an impression, with its bold granite facade and its broad steeple somewhat masked by the withered limbs of numerous tall trees. And quite the commanding view of the ocean it had, too, a panoramic sweep of the North Sea such as I've never witnessed. Approaching the old tower, it was curious to gaze upon the stretch of coastline below, from which that strange, vast rock protruded from the lapping waves. What could its original purpose have been? Stepping into a sizable courtyard along its northeast face, I approached the vast double doors that marked the entrance to Redditch Tower. It wasn't necessary to knock. A cloaked figure opened the door the moment I neared it, beckoning me into the uncertain gloom beyond. Crossing the threshold, I issued a nod of the head, sensing that the unusually tall, veiled character wasn't particularly vocal. I was shown, by way of a plain chamber and several interconnected corridors, to a vast hall, at the center of which stood a large dining table, peopled by 5 similarly shrouded, mysterious figures. At the head of the table, in a dark grey gown, sat an elderly lady, her face a testament to the endurance of the hardy. Invited to sit with a wave of her hand, I did so, positioning myself opposite the lady in grey. For several moments I studied my surroundings, absorbing the drab and utterly unadorned space in which I had found myself. Beams of light penetrated the hall at intervals, highlighting a number of items on the table before me, namely, a dozen silver goblets, 6 of those 8-sided plates I'd seen at the market the day prior, and a large leather-bound book open to its middle pages. On the verso, under the glow of an errant shaft of light, I beheld yet another interpretation of that kraken-like thing, that tentacled monster with the face of a coalfish. The lady in grey must have noticed my disgust, as her first words were with regards to the thing. "He's coming home," she said, gesturing towards the detailed sketch before me. "Who is?" I asked, feigning ignorance. "The sleeping king," she answered. "Oh," I said, averting my gaze from the troublesome illustration. Just why this lady, this representative of the Seven Sisters, had chosen to share these sentiments with me, I hadn't the slightest clue. But as I looked at her, dimly illuminated in the drab hall, I felt some modicum of recognition. Had I met her before? If so, when and where? Silence prevailed for the longest time. I felt my limbs threatening to atrophy. But then the lady in grey climbed to her feet, rising high above the table. Like her counterpart, the silent lookout who had shown me in, this old woman was extraordinarily tall, her long years showing on her face alone. At a guess, I'd say she was in her late 80s, but her stature told another story. I watched, somewhat mesmerized, as the tall figure marched slowly back and forth, in and out of the rays of light, her steps rhythmical and graceful. Hadn't she been at the dance last night? Wasn't this the lady that had climbed onto the stage with the hideous banner? I was all but certain. "He's coming home," she said again, casting glances at the open pages of the book on the table. My eyes were drawn to the other individuals at the table. All 5 of them were female, each of them still and silent in the presence of the lady in grey. They were undoubtedly the 5 lithe dancers who had preceded the lady in grey yesterday. "Do you know why you are here?" the lady in grey asked. A strange question, I thought, as I knew exactly why I was there, on the island at least. "I'm a writer," I answered boldly. "I'm here in search of inspiration for a new writing project." To this, the lady in grey failed to respond. She simply continued her quiet pacing back and forth, her bare feet quiet upon the cold stones. "Do you recognize it?" she asked, indicating with a long white index finger the open book on the table. And I found that I did. The olive pages, the bold jet-black cursive, the distinctive illustration. "It is," she confirmed, in reply to my unspoken surmise. "The Sorcerella? Really?" I mumbled, dumbfounded. The lady in grey nodded before returning to her seat. Jericho's Sorcerella, the Book of Spells, is an incredibly rare tome indeed. Upon its pages are allegedly the secrets of ancient kings, incantations used to summon beings and entities that walked the infant face of earth long before the advent of mankind. These things, semi-aquatic in nature, evolved on distant worlds billions of years ago. Admittedly, my knowledge of the book is minimal, but one is unable to stray too far into the occult and the paranormal without stumbling across mention of books such as the Sorcerella or Fisk's Nun, for example. "The Sleeping King is not of this earth," came the hoary tones of the lady in grey. "He is a native of the distant world Torla. You may know it by another name, Europa, one of Jupiter's many children. Pure the Sleeping King was, for many eons." I listened, mouth agape. But his purity, like that of his brethren, was lost when, and she paused hesitantly here, they arrived. Who or what the lady implied by they, I never learned, as she neglected to elaborate, and I was too dumbstruck to ask. If the grotesque creature portrayed on the plates and the pages of the Sorcerella was once the victim of something more terrible and monstrous, I'm not sure I want to know. She did, however, in cryptic fashion, turn to another page of the legendary tome, which, to my great surprise, included a map of the island, complete with topographical markers, and said, "This is his home now, the Isle of Seacliffe, and the deep waters that surround it." The lady paused again. "He's coming home," she stated for the third time, and then added, looking right at me, "As are you." And it was with those loaded words that I felt that queer jolt of recognition once again. Who was this lady, really? In the same moment, a strange burning sensation spread across the flesh behind my ears, and I began to scratch fiercely like some flea-ravaged dog. I was about to ask a question. Well, several questions, actually. Why do the 7 sisters number only 6? What does the return of the sleeping king have to do with me? What in the world is going to happen when he does return? But the lady in grey put a stop to all that. She raised a pale hand above her head and whispered, "Be on your way, Mr. Howarth." And so I left Redditch Tower with more questions than answers. Isn't that always the case? Returning to the Golden Crab, I contemplated the sisters' possession of Jericho's Sorcerella, the suggested origin of the sleeping king, Europa, in the shadow of Jupiter, and the recondite they that drove the deity from his ancestral home. These were things I hadn't known, couldn't have known. Was the Sorcerella an extraterrestrial text? I simply must look into the history of Jericho when I return to the mainland. Furthermore, I considered the suggestion that I too was experiencing a homecoming. In what possible manner? I mean, I can't deny the pull this place has always had on me. Can't refute the familiarity I feel when I look upon certain faces. Can't ignore the strange, indifferent way in which the natives regard me. And the dreams. What about the dreams? I must take the evening to think and unwind. What revelations might tomorrow bring? Thanks for listening today, folks. Join us again tomorrow for the next part.